You surface from the underground at Piccadilly Circus,
Mind the gap.
making your way through the glittering lights of London's West End. You take a turn down a quaint-looking street into the notorious neighborhood of Soho, and you arrive at our intimate cafe. Welcome to The Big Smoke, a live-recorded variety show podcast. My name is Kevin Bennett, and I'll be your guide through this experience of comedy, conversation, and community. In this episode, you'll hear from Sean Clark the Mudlark and humanitarian Anil Qasemi. Before we get to the episode, I thought I'd tell you a bit about this show. I'm someone who's been involved in theatrical ventures my entire life. I've always loved everything from the broadest of entertainment to the nichest of art forms. I've spent years directing Shakespeare plays while devouring sitcoms and talk shows every evening. So The Big Smoke to me it's about the importance of connection, community, and the ritual of gatherings. Each episode is a live performance, so if you'd like to attend, our first show of the new season is September 13th, and we'll be hosting them on the second and fourth Friday of each month at Sacred Grounds Cafe in Soho. Change in Muddy Waters is the subtitle for today. This can mean, you can take this literal, you can take this as a sort of metaphor, and we're going to welcome our first guest. Before I read a little bit about the wonderful Sean Clark, I did not know what mudlarking was. I grew up in Canada. This was not a term that I had heard. I think it's just this beautiful passion that people have that illuminates really the history of this city in such an interesting way. One of my parish notices is I discovered a podcast, maybe a lot of you have heard of it, but it's called Arts and Ideas. And it's like a BBC podcast. And they have a panel of thinkers and they talk about what's going on in the news and digest it in a kind of philosophical way. And there was actually someone a couple weeks ago who's a mudlark and a historian on. Her name is Jade Cuddle. And she talked about the fact that the word human comes from the Latin word humus, meaning earth or ground. And there's something kind of beautiful about our connection to the ground, to the mud, to the earth. So I came across Sean at Waterman's Hall in February at a mudlarking event exhibition. He is a licensed mudlark who is passionate about uncovering the lives of people who lived and traded in 17th century London and bringing to life their lost stories. You can find him on Instagram at Sean Clark Mudlark. Everybody please give a warm round of applause for Sean Clark.
Okay, good evening, and thanks for coming tonight. I hope you enjoy my talk on a journey through London's history, really based on things I find mudlarking and the research that it takes you to. Bringing back to life people that lived 350, 400 years ago. As a mudlark, I'm a licensed mudlark, and you need a license. It's illegal to go to the Thames foreshore and remove things from the shore. So my licence allows me to scour and search the riverbanks for things that people have either lost or thrown away over the last 2,000 years. It allows me to search between the Thames Barrier in the east and Teddington in the west. Now that's a hell of a lot of area to cover. I'm also a really strange mudlark because I'm what they call an eye-only mudlark. I don't dig, I don't scrape, I don't metal detect. I only use my eyes and I walk along the riverbanks, or you'll often see me by the Millennium Bridge with rubber knee pads crawling around on my hands and knees. What you're looking for is what the river gives up or what erodes out the foreshore, and every tide is different. Also, every boat that goes by, there could be nothing there. A wave comes in and then there's a treasure. So all our finds have to be recorded at the Museum of London. We have our own finds liaison officer, and they're normally recorded and put on the Portable Antiquities Scheme database. So what things do I find? What things do I like collecting? Well, I like collecting objects that are handmade, bone objects, bone knife handles. Bone dice are my favourite to find. Roman, medieval, post-medieval, really tactile, and you often wonder about the stories of who lost them. Or did they throw that in temper because they lost their game? Another thing I like finding is beads, trade beads. And before I started mudlarking, I never thought I'd like beads. I can't tell my friends at West Ham that I like beads because I just think that they'll give me a good hiding. But I like finding coins. Who doesn't like a beautiful coin from history? I've got an array of coins up here later. If you want to come and have a look, please come ask questions. But the most interesting thing I'm fascinated with is small change and the history of trade tokens, which I'll talk about in a minute. So throughout history, there was never enough small change. Every monarch that ever lived was not making enough for the traders. They were making their gold coins, their silver coins of high value. But the normal people trying to earn a living, there was not enough coins to trade with. They were making lead tokens, really primitive things. And people were doing things like this. This is a coin, by the way. Don't lose it, please. So it was a short cross penny. And someone's gone into a shop between 1189 and 1199. It's a Richard I, the Lionheart. And they've purchased something for halfpence. So the trader for change has cut the coin in half and given them half back because the value of the coin was the value of the metal. It was 1 pence worth of silver. It's now halfpence worth of silver. And that's how people got by, cutting coins into halves and quarters. As the price of silver went up, the coins got smaller. Again, it was us normal people that were suffering. That's an Elizabeth I, halfpenny. Don't lose it. It's beautiful. It's 500 years old. Elizabeth I, you can see her in all her glory, a silver penny. It's been clipped as well. So someone has had a nibble at the round sides of the coin, nicking silver off it, which is what they've done. Punishable by death, by the way. So the story of coins was hard, and there was always silver coins. They wouldn't make a copper coin because they thought it was too lowly a metal to have the face of a king on it. Well, the country was skint. They thought about copper coins during Elizabeth's reign, but it was when James I came to the throne that they decided they were going to make the first copper coin. And this is £1 in weight of copper, okay? So from £1 in weight of copper, they was able to make the first copper coin in this country. It's a farthing. And it was called a royal farthing, and it was commissioned and made by Lord Harrington, so it's known as the Harrington farthing. £1 of copper would make you 24 shillings and threepence worth of this coin. So quickly do the maths, that's 1,164 of them. And it's our country's first ever copper coin. So through James's reign, there was a few copper coins. Charles I was making coppers, and the last copper coin made was the beautiful rose farthing. And they made that because people were forging the other coins. And the rose farthing has a beautiful rose on the back of it. And it's a really interesting coin because it was our country's first ever bimetal coin. We've got the £2 coin today, which is two metals. This had a brass plug put in the top of it to stop forgery. They were made between 1636 and 1644. And they are the coin that mudlarks find the most. Thank you very much. That they find the most. We think it was the fare for travelling across the river in the wherries and the boats. So Civil War starts. And then on that cold 30th of January morning, Charles walks down Whitehall to the banqueting hall. He walks out of a window onto a scaffold, and England changes forever. We're a republic. There's no more copper coins. Cromwell takes over. He's not interested in small change. He makes silver coins. He does make a few half pennies, and that is a Cromwell half penny. It's tiny. So the traders can't trade again. But there's no king's prerogative anymore. If people were making coins, they're not going to get killed or put in prison. Parliament spoke about coins, small change, in 1649. And the minutes says a discussion on small monies for the poorer type. The poorer type, the traders, the normal people. And then the magic happened. The magic that is 17th century trade tokens. When Charles I was alive, you had all these skilled engravers in the mint. And Charles loved his face on a coin. So they were forever making new coins with his profile on. 1649, they're all redundant. So then they hatch a plan. They start making copper coins. They start making tokens. And these tokens are absolutely magic. In essence, they were illegal money, made out of necessity. They were made by the people, and they talked of the people. They didn't talk of monarchs or anything like that. They just had the traders' names on them. And it solved the problem of small change. 90% of the dies for these tokens were made in the mint. It wasn't the Royal Mint anymore, it was the mint. And the coins are wonderful. So the salesman used to go from the tower to all the towns, the cities, and they would sell the concept of trade tokens. And it reminds me of double glazing salesmen, really, how they would have sold it. And this is how I think it would have gone. Good morning, sir. I see you are a candle maker and you have the best candles in this town, I see. And I know you've got a problem with a lack of small change. But we're going to solve that for you today because we're going to make you a coin. It's not going to speak of kings, it's going to speak of you. It's going to have your name on that coin. And it's going to have on that coin where you trade. So people are going to know where you are. And it's also going to have an image on it. And that image will tell them what your trade is. So what do you reckon? Are you interested? I've just been down to John Smith, a candle maker in the next town. He's just bought £20 worth. And what we're going to do, we're going to give you an incentive. For every 20 shillings worth you buy, we're going to give you a shilling's worth free. So you're going to make money out of it. Your name is going to be in the pockets of everyone in this area. They're going to know who the best candle maker is in town and they're going to know where to come. So how many do you want? And that's how they sold the concept. So people were buying these tokens. They were made from 1649 to 1672. Countrywide, there was over 14,000 token issuers. 14,000 different people had tokens made. The pictures on them are amazing and beautiful. And they solved the problem of small change. Let me tell you a story about a token holder. This is a token for Abraham Brown. We've got his name around the outside. The image is a bear with a chain. Okay, so what was he trading? Well, on the back of the token, it says, here's halfpenny. So that's your denomination. Halfpence of change he would give people who went to his business. Where did he trade? He traded at a place called Bridgefoot, Southwark. So where was Bridgefoot? And it's not a trick question. Any ideas? The foot of the bridge. It was at the foot of the medieval bridge. And there it was. It was the Bear Tavern at Bridgefoot. It was a medieval tavern, first noted in 1341, and it was a very strategically important tavern. It was at Pepper Alley Stairs, which were the last stairs before you had to shoot the bridge, they called it. People didn't like going through the medieval bridge. 20 arches, fast-flowing water. Boats capsized. So people used to get off at Pepper Alley Stairs, and of course, you've got the Bear Tavern there. So you go in for something to eat and drink. So, very important pub. In 1631, a law was passed. They boarded up the back doors of every pub in London because of the contraband that was coming up the river and people weren't paying taxes. But the only pub door they left open was the Bear. So very, very strategic indeed. Pepys visited the Bear on loads of occasions. There's one incident when he left the bear late at night and he walked onto the medieval bridge and his foot got stuck in a hole. And he thought he broke his leg, and the constable had to help him out of the hole. So Pepys knew the pub very, very well. So what about Abraham Brown? What do we know about him? Well, he originally started as the landlord of the White Horse Tavern in Lombard Street, and he took over that pub in 1641 with his wife Penelope, and they went on to have 5 children. Poor Penelope, she died in childbirth in 1652. Abraham remarried, and he remarried a young lady called Frances. They went on to have 2 children. But we know that Frances was really, really younger than Abraham. So how do we know this? Our friend Samuel Pepys. He writes in his diary, March 1666, "Today I visited the White Horse Tavern in Lombard Street, and the mistress of the house was there. I have heard so much about her. She is the beautifulest woman I have ever seen. And yet her husband, Abraham Brown, is so old and simple looking. So you've got this really young girl and this really old man in this pub. And I often wonder, how big was that pub? There's no photos or anything else like that. But again, your journey of research. So you get the half tax returns for Ladies' Day, the 25th of March, 1666, the last ones before the Great Fire. And when you look down all the fireplaces that people have, at the bottom, Abraham Brown at the White Horse, 18 fireplaces. It was massive. And he had to pay 2 shillings a year for every fireplace he had there. Now, during 1665, 2 of Abraham's servants died of the plague, and that is quite sad, really. So the pub burns down. Great Fire, September 1666. He takes over the Bear Tavern at Bridgefoot. But tragedy, February 1667, his young wife dies. And again, we only know this through Samuel Pepys. He writes, "Tonight I took water, and my waterman told me that the mistress of the Bear Tavern did throw herself from a window and drown in the river. This saddens me because she was the mistress of the White Horse Tavern and the most beautifulest woman I've ever seen. Yet I'd heard she'd been very melancholy lately." So we would never know what's happened to Frances. Abraham died in 1672. He was buried in St Mary Walnuts Church at the end of Lombard Street. The Bear Tavern, if you know Southwark very well, on the site of the Bear today is a pub. And that pub's called the Mudlark, believe it or not. So please, next time you're in Southwark and Borough Market, go in the pub, raise a glass for poor Frances. They're the sort of stories it takes you on. I hope you like my stories. There's many more traders' stories that I've learned and brought back to life. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much. I find it so interesting and inspiring that there's literally, depending on where you are, there are objects from every era, I guess, of London. So you can discover something from 1,000 years ago or 200 years ago.
Yeah, there is, unfortunately, where I go on the shore, because there's different areas for different periods, really. So my collection is really medieval, post-medieval. There are people like Jamie and Sam that go to what we call Rome. And we have got our own Caesar down there. But they predominantly find Roman artefacts. Jamie's got some beautiful Roman small artefacts here. Later on, if you want to come and show them to you. So it's 2,000 years of history, even older. Steve, you found is it Mesolithic?
Mesolithic hand axe.
A Mesolithic hand axe. How old's that?
8,000 10,000 years.
Only 10,000 years old. And it's there, and you never know what the river's going to give up. Every day is different.
There's something very, it seems meditative in a way, Because you must have to have a lot of patience, no?
It's patience and it is luck, to be honest.
Good eyes.
Good eyes. I always say the things find me. I don't find them. And there are days when I go home and I don't have to wash my fines box out that night because there's nothing in it. But it's a community as well, so there's always interesting people there.
Beautiful. Anyone in the audience have a burning question for Sean before? Yes, in the back. Nice and loud. I'll repeat the question so we can all hear. How do you optimize your luck? Do you go at low tide, high tide? Just making sure everyone. That's it.
Everyone does it different, but this is how I do it. So we've got a wonderful book on tides. It's a yearly thing, so I know the tides for the coming year. And I normally get there 3 hours before a low tide when you can first get on the shore. So I sometimes think of it as like when you pull your quilt back off your bed of a night, you're revealing exactly how the river has thrown that on that high tide. And I walk up and down and I follow that tide out for 3 hours. And then I'll follow that tide back in for another 3 hours. And you do get to read the foreshore. Metal objects go to metal, bone objects go to bone. So if you can find a load of metal pins or something like that, there's a good chance there's going to be other metal artifacts there. But as things get washed in, I know a lot of people don't like the clipper boats because they say it's eroding the foreshore. But you can be standing there and there's nothing, which happened to me. There was nothing. A boat went by, a wave come in, and there was a part of a Thomas Becket pilgrim bag sitting in between my legs. My God.
Amazing. Well, let's give Sean Clark a round of applause one more time. Thank you so much. Sean, this is yours. This is for you. In each show, we like to hear how you are fostering connection and community. We call this a parish notice. So I'll start. My parish notice is that I'd like to find more group activities. I find that sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of, my day-to-day life, and I don't connect enough with groups other than, of course, at the Big Smoke. So I was thinking, something I've been thinking about for a long time is to try taking maybe like a pottery class, something that's new, something I've never done before, something that's a bit messy and fun. And I'm hoping when I do that, I can meet some different people who I might not otherwise meet in an everyday circumstance. And now, over to you.
Travelling to a remote area of Norway with a good friend and a good daughter to visit Wittgenstein's cabin.
We are taking our pet tortoise called Monster to the Thaden Boyce annual tortoise race, where we will be talking to and meeting several other tortoise owners and hopefully winning a prize.
I'm going to breathe and remember that even though it feels like everything piles up and seems insurmountable, you just need to take one step at a time.
I'm going to introduce you to our first guest, who we're going to hear a bit of his story, and then we're going to have a chance to ask some questions about his experience. Really, really inspiring person who I saw at a storytelling event not too long ago and reached out because I was so inspired by his story and his life and his outlook. I thought I really want to share this with you. So let me tell you a little bit about Anil Qasemi before he comes to the stage. So Anil is the project lead for Afghan Resettlement at USPUK, a survivor and recent refugee himself. He leverages his experiences to assist refugees by providing essential information and directing them towards vital services. By day, Anil works at USPUK while also being the entrepreneur behind HATOPIA, an online headwear provider. He's a former award-winning journalist, a current humanitarian. He's contributed to prominent publications and engaged in extensive humanitarian work. Anil graduated from the American University of Afghanistan. He is committed to empowering fellow refugees and guiding them towards successful pathways amid challenging circumstances. Please give a huge round of applause for Anil Qasemi as he comes to the stage.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I consider myself the luckiest person in this world for the past couple of years. I have recently moved to the UK from Afghanistan, but just before I tell you that story on how and why, this specific environment, the way the stables are set and the way we all have gathered, it just reminded me of something that has changed my life. And it was just a happy day like this. I was the happiest and proudest person on earth that day when I realized I had secured admission at the prestigious university in my hometown in Kabul, the American University in Afghanistan, where not everyone gets a place there. My family still remember the yelp of my joy. I was so happy, so passionate to start to make a difference, to be somebody, to realize my dreams. Sadly, however, a couple of months after I joined the university, exactly in the same tables and classrooms, sitting and listening to a lecture from my English professor, there was a huge explosion. And I had to confront that at the place of hope, idealism, and enlightenment. Days like that just comes when I grew up in a challenging environment in Afghanistan, and it would happen frequently, almost on a daily basis or every other day. But as humans, we always feel to be on the positive side. I never thought I will be stuck into one of the incidents like that. I will tell you something about that. Somebody came into the classroom and chucked a hand grenade into our classroom after the big explosion that happened initially. And it threw me off the second-story building into the ground, in the grass, on a lovely evening. And as I laid on the grass outside the university building on the campus, I could only hear screams of my fellow students, my friends, gunshots, the smell of the bomb explosions, the fire, and the blood all over my body. And that's when I realized I had seen death. And I will tell you something about it. I had the feeling. It's cold, lonely, sad, final. These thoughts ran through my head as I was just laying down, looking into the sky, and could barely move my body. I tried to stand up, only to fail. I tried and stood again, fell again. I touched my leg. There was no sense. I felt like there was no leg anymore. I touched my head. It's all bleeding. And I can barely know what to do, where to go. And I pushed myself. I pushed myself to a different side of the university building, but only to slip. A journey of 1 minute took me 15 minutes to complete, as if I moved from this side of the building to the other one. And I finally managed to hide somewhere. As I waited there for a couple of hours for help to arrive, but I was slipping conscious, unconscious, and I would wake up, look around, waiting for hope or somebody to come and save us all. Eventually, I could hear the special forces coming into the building. And thankfully, because I managed to go from one side of the building to another and I was hiding somewhere, they managed to take a couple of us out that evening. And then still I was lucky to have been able to get close to the special force to get me out, but not everyone managed to get that out at night. Most of my friends were stuck until early morning that night, 5 o'clock, but I left at 10. But I remember getting on an ambulance, making our way to the hospital, seeing my family for the first time, their face full of anxiety. And not just that, but hundreds of other families who I still get emotional because everyone wanted to see their son and daughter that evening on an ambulance, hoping to at least get peace of them. And I considered myself lucky again because I was on an ambulance, broken, parts of my body, but still at the hospital where I received exceptional help and support, life-saving support on immediate basis at the hospital in Kabul. But as I was reflecting within those seconds about the situation at the university and how I managed to get up and stand up, and every single step that I would take was causing me eternity and unbearable pain, because it's simply impossible to walk when you have a fracture and your whole body is broken into pieces and you have no idea why it happened and who did it. I was helped by a group of different people I never met in my life, people who owed nothing to me. From the time I was in the hospital, doctors, international doctors, local doctors. And then I was transferred back home, where I spend most of my time in my bedroom. And I spend most of my time sleeping. Waking up would require courage, because you would get thoughts about your friends, you would get talk about your dreams and ambitions, and in your body when you can't move it, and you can't do things you could normally do a week ago. And I am man enough to admit that I cried during those first couple of weeks, months, because I could barely do anything. And I thought I would become a burden for the community, for the country, and for the world for the rest of my life, and I would never be able to contribute to it. And I finally managed to be allowed to get on a plane to travel out of Afghanistan to receive some specialist care. But that trip was a real experience, because during that trip I realized something about both of us. We might call ourselves Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Christians, but we share common humanity. And I realized that. And when it comes to it, we all care for each other. That's when I realized, as I traveled from Afghanistan to a random country, random doctors, random people and nurses, and they put me back together. People of different faiths and nationalities. And I came back walking without the wheelchair or a walking frame. I could just walk by myself. People who trusted me, people who gave me courage and supported me, were people I've never met in my life, as I said. But as I moved on, I felt like they're entitled to the investment they've had on me. And I had to play my part in the bargain. Back then I had a choice. I could lay down on my bed, just as I did at the university when I first fell down in the grass of university, or I could just get up. I chose to get up. I willed myself to get up. I started reading. I started writing. I was never a writer at that time. I started writing, just journaling. I started reaching out to friends. I started taking the courage to walk back to the university building a couple of months later, though my body was shaking when I first went in there. But I stood up. And I went to academic competitions, started writing, won academic awards, traveled outside, made friends, spoke at certain university events, ran the club, got back to work, and found myself again. And I started realizing my broken dreams, and I started to put everything back together. I always believed that education in general liberates us all. But in places like mine, education does really change lives, and it liberates you. And it gives you courage to move on. It teaches you resilience and hope, and it connects you to the world. I always think about, often when there's a violence happening, people get so angry. But in my case, a very, very personal experience, I always think that the best revenge to violence is peace, education, and forgiveness. I still don't know who did attack the university and why they did it, but I've already forgiven them. And that's the only way we could all experience peace. And just when I realized things have got better, a couple of years later, Afghanistan fell, and you all probably saw it on the TV. And I found myself among the crowd in the airport trying to get on a plane to get out because of my work and especially after the incident, my writings and activism. And I moved to the UK. Everything started from zero. never easy. But again, I met with act of kindness from so many people in this country that I have never met in life and never thought I would. Random people from different parts of the country from day one. A couple of weeks and months later, I managed to find my way. I secured employment where they were extremely helpful, just a few minutes away from this place. And I moved on. I had the dream of getting back into my entrepreneurialism. I've been thinking about it. And I went to see a play just around this place for the first time in my life. I've never been to a theater before. And as I just entered the theater, and I often talk about this, I saw a lot of people wearing certain hats. It was a cold evening, rainy day. And it occurred to me, why do people wear hats? Because we don't have these fedora hats or any of them in Afghanistan, and people doesn't wear these type of hats. So I was like, why do people wear hats? And I kept thinking about this until I thought maybe it could be a business idea to start with. So I spent a couple of months, almost a year, trying to find out about hats, and I realized it's still a fashion and trending in Europe and especially in the UK. I went to business exhibition, met with some suppliers and people who were selling hats. I launched finally this year, after a long 2 years of research, I was able to launch a small company called HATOPIA. And since then we have been doing great. We've had over 1,000 sales now in 26 countries. And we are one of the top-rated sellers in certain platforms. Of course, we have received great support from so many people on that. But during the day, I've been helping, just as Kevin said, other refugees who have been evacuated from Ukraine and Afghanistan, and people who basically have been impacted after the recent changes of administration in Afghanistan and the war in Ukraine. And I feel so proud to be able to do it, because I wouldn't be able to speak, to come here, or to have been settled successfully if it hadn't been about just random people trying to come into the front lines to help people like me. And looking forward to contributing not just to refugees who are in the UK, but also to this country in general. Thank you for taking the trouble to listen this story, especially after a very good start by Kevin. And it's back to you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, have a sip of water. We have a couple minutes for some questions if you guys want to think about them, but I'll start. I mean, you talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that strikes me about you from when I first met you as well as now is you're so optimistic. And I think it would be so easy for someone who's been through everything that you've been through to sort of lose hope. So you talk about there's been a lot of people who've helped along the way, and you've seen the kindness of strangers. I guess, is there anything more you can say about how you have such optimism, it seems like, and hope? Maybe that's not something that you know, but I'm just curious, because I think there's a lot of people who've maybe been through a lot less, and it would be very easy to only see the kind of negative things and not notice maybe the people who are helping and things like that.
Thank you, Kevin. I think in my case, personally, it's so difficult because situations for everyone is different. But in general, there's always, in life always gives you two options. And in my case, it has been two options, just as I said, either lay down and keep complaining about the situation and not move and push myself, or keep moving forward and try to take the best advantage of, even if it's an obstacle, you could sometimes turn it into, there's a great saying, which I have learned almost a decade ago, which talk about lemon and lemonade. So I sometimes think that even challenges that comes through life, optimism itself has the power to turn it into a very huge success in one's life. And I personally have gained optimism, so many factors. I think I spoke about education and how it liberates one. In my case, I've spent a lot of time reading books, and I often read self-help books, which sometimes takes you to a million directions, because every book gives you different ways. But it certainly helps in situations like when you're put in a crisis, so the brain automatically functions, and it wants you, because we have the survival instinct. So at times like that, I think it's just about finding through your way to optimism, and that's the only way forward to survive. And maybe because I have survived, so I thought that I have to go through this. But also, as I said, we all have someone in our lives that just out of nowhere, they're being very kind. So we could basically reflect and connect and use that as an optimism to build a bit of a hope. And if there's none, I think we could build one. Or if we think of about dreams that we have in life, our ambitions we have in life, and those itself could turn into an optimism. And once you know the joy of optimism in life, I think you would probably use it every day. A final thing on this would be, I had a job that I didn't like long ago, not because it was because it was in a dangerous environment, and it was slightly over when you want to do something. It's extreme pressure. But I remember I was listening to a podcast long ago, which said that even if you don't like a job in the morning, just say that, oh, I'm going to do it today. And that's what I've been applying, not just on a job, but in general. Even if there are times that I'm not happy with it, you can either do this thing by a negative force and pressure on yourself, or you can say, I'm going to do it. And it just goes so smoothly, and you don't get bored doing that. And in time, it turns into optimism, that you feel optimistic and positive about almost everything.
Did you ever were you always like this, or is it through the training? Because I just think, we get so many images on social media, and moving through London, everybody's in their own little world, and it's so easy to get, I feel, caught up in the negative loop and feel kind of hopeless. You mentioned some self-help books. Was there a time, or maybe in your recovery, when it was like you maybe almost gave up? Or I'm just curious, or were you born that way?
There were times. I think on the first part of your question, not that I've always been like that. I spent the first few years of my life working for a company, and because we were working in a different part of the world, we had a very good income from the jobs. And I invested 3 years of my income savings into launching a food factory, and we failed it miserably. And no one would be able to do anything after that, which was a huge loss in my early careers, entrepreneurial career, because we hired over 50 people, and they were like massive operation, and we just went, and we went bankruptcy. So I think I learned a couple of years after that. So I learned from mistakes, from situations like that. But obviously, when it comes to recovery and health, it was a resilience that came into my body. Maybe I know probably because we grew up in an environment where these things often was happening, so we somehow got used to adjusting into that environment. But obviously, when it comes to personal situations, it's so difficult. And when I was recovering, there were times that, as I said, I would wake up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, wanted to use the restroom, and without help of my family, I would never be able to go, because it would take me, even with a walking frame, 20 minutes to get from my bed to the restroom. And in those times, what I did was I used the frame, and I tried to go, even if it took me 20 minutes, but I tried. I failed. I felt the pain, but I tried. And I think just through that process, I learned. So definitely, every time I was trying to walk, I had pain, and it was hopelessness, and I used to cry. I was not connected with everyone because my family kept my phone away, as they would see my friends' photographs and listening to their voice messages from that same day, who were no longer, unfortunately, with us. But I think that was a process. Yes, I had been down, just naturally, like everyone.
I was just thinking about, you mentioned your parents kept your phone away. I think phones are evil, but yeah, just in general, it's probably good to take. That's always my goal. Every week I even say at these, I'm going to not sleep with my phone next to my face. I will admit I didn't do it yet, but I will try. We have a little segment here that we're going to start filling up that board later on that I call parish notices, which is basically how you are finding connection and or community in the coming week. I'll give you some examples. So that could be I'm going to leave my phone at home and then go out into the world and actually make eye contact and have a conversation with somebody, ask my barista's name or something like that. Could be that you're going to a specific event coming up, that you're going to connect with people. Could be doing something with your family or friends. Do you have any parish notices for us? How you are connecting in the coming week that you want to share?
It's my birthday end of the month. So I am planning to, just a few of us are in the UK, so planning to celebrate with my friends and travel a bit too far from London. On the professional side, there are two things I'm planning to launch, which has been on the plan but never happened. Just so excited to do that on the job, but also with HATOPIA, we have just started doing some unique designs. So I'm looking forward to doing all of them. And we are almost getting to the US market. So the entire focus for the next couple of weeks is there.
I can't get it out of the bag, though. I'm trying to do this really subtly. Well, speaking of, is this one of the new designs that you're talking about?
These are caps.
These are caps,
I've got
okay.
caps because it's one size fits
Yes,
all.
yes.
Yeah.
Anil, first of all, let's give him one more round of applause. Thank you so much. Really, really beautiful.
It's now time for Victorian parlor games. All games, from the Roman gladiatorial battles to a quiet round of cards or charades, are imitations of real-life situations. The activity of playing games is the expression of an instinct. For play is far older than culture, older even than prehistory. So here's our offering to you, a way to connect with your friends and family and have a bit of fun. Today's game is Forbidden Letters. A letter of the alphabet is chosen, and the players are forbidden to use it in any word when answering the selected questioner. Furthermore, a player must not answer with the words yes or no. If, for example, the forbidden letter is E and the question is, do you like this game? The answer cannot be yes, no, or, for example, I like it, or any other reply containing an E. Their reply could be not much or a bit. Now, if the player answers wrongly, they are out. Another way that I found that makes this game work really well is if they have to answer right away. No hesitation allowed. If your players are too whip smart, simply add more letters. And let us know how it goes on Instagram @TheBigSmokeVariety. That's all for this episode. If you want to take a look at the coins Sean spoke about, we'll have images of them on our Instagram account @TheBigSmokeVariety. Also, if you'd like to check out Anil's new hat company, HATOPIA, you can find them on Instagram @HATOPIA_UK. So that's @HATOPIA_UK, or their website, hatopia.co.uk. If you enjoyed what you heard, we will be releasing episodes every 2 weeks. And if you'd like to attend one of our live shows in London, check out our Instagram bio for more information on how to book tickets. That's @TheBigSmokeVariety. Thanks for listening.
Well, so long until we meet again. I'm so glad that you were here, my friends. And the time may be fast, but good friendships will last. So long until we meet again. Good night, everybody.